Hi, I'm Ze'ev Ben Shachar, Director of Israel Education at Jerusalem U. Over the last 10 years, I've spoken to thousands of students and adults around the world and with audiences spanning the political and religious spectrum. Let me show you. We'll explore Israel's moral dilemmas and the conflicting narratives of Israel's history. We'll see Israel in a larger context and come away informed, inspired, and proud of Israel. Israel is a leader today. It has the most medical patents, the most startup companies, the most museum scientists, engineers per capita. I challenge my audiences.
We call it the War of Independence. Palestinians call it the Nakba. Let's talk about that.
I laugh with them. I want us to learn a little bit of history. Why is that funny? And I empower them. To speak up for anything that you believe in is not easy. You gotta be courageous.
Ze'ev Ben Shachar is honestly one of the most engaging, experienced educators I know.
He combines deep knowledge with nuanced thinking.
He makes you really just become an active part of the class.
I'm confident in asking my questions to him, knowing that I'm going to get a genuine and truthful answer.
Every person that leaves that lecture is feeling inspired.
I would be honored to bring my Israel to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Len, Deputy Ambassador Michael Friedman, Chief Rabbi Goldstein, Ben Schwartz, Chair of the Zionist Federation, Co-Chair Mark Hyman, Nikki Raz, Executive Director, Gabi Sachs, Executive Director of South African Friends for Israel. And thank you to organizations from all across South Africa and beyond that have come to support Israel today. Thank you to Daisy, thank you to Ebenezer, thank you to Bridges for Peace, and thank you for members of Parliament that are here with us today. I'm very honored to be here today. You may tell by my accent that I spent some time in a small town here. I'm sure you haven't heard of Vanderbijl Park. Yes? This is for you. And I'm excited to be here after 30 years that I haven't been to South Africa. It's a real honor. What I want to do today is I want to talk about the problem of the apartheid analogy and the BDS campaign. What are we dealing with, and what can we do about it as supporters of Israel and the community? So the problem is that the analogy works, unfortunately. If you Google today, you can do it on your smartphone now, and you can look up South African apartheid, you have about 18 million results. If you do the same for Israel, you will get 16.5 million. The analogy works. That's our problem. That's what we're dealing with. That's why we do our education. Just a couple of words about Jerusalem U. What we do is we make films about Israel. Some of you may have seen our films Beneath the Helmet, which is a film about the Israeli army. We make films about the situation on campus and about Israeli and Jewish history. And you can all find these films through the Zionist Federation, who were gracious enough to sponsor this trip here. You can find the films and lesson plans for high school students and college students and adults that accompanies this film. So this is the problem that we have. Now, you can find it even in humor, in caricatures, where it's just one and the same, the analogy. Israel, South Africa, Johannesburg, Tel Aviv. This is what we're dealing with. Now, people ask, well, where did this start? Did it start in the Durban Conference of 2001? Perhaps it started even before that, in 1975. In 1975, there was a resolution in the UN that said that Zionism is equated to racism. And it was only revoked in 1991. But throughout this presentation, I want you to notice that this is not black or white, this is not either or, and that this is a journey of fighting against injustice and fighting against racism, because throughout this journey, there are people that stand up to the truth. One of these people is former ambassador in the UN, Chaim Herzog, who actually made one of his most famous speeches in 1975 after this resolution came out.
Mr. President, I stand not here as a supplicant. Vote as your moral conscience dictates to you. For the issue is not Israel or Zionism. The issue is the continued existence of this organization, which has been dragged to its lowest point of discredit by a cushion of despotisms and races. You yourselves bear the responsibility for your stand before history, for as such will you be viewed in history. But we, the Jewish people, will not forget. For us, the Jewish people, this resolution based on hatred, falsehood and arrogance is devoid of any moral or legal value. For us, the Jewish people, this is no more than a piece of paper, and we shall treat it as such.
Those are the kind of people like you that are standing up for the truth. 2001, the Durban Conference, was supposed to be a conference about racism, xenophobia. It was a conference that focused on bashing Israel. And there were also courageous people. The US retracted their participation, Israel, of course, the ambassador at the time, the Secretary of State at the time, Colin Powell, said, "Today I've instructed our representatives at the World Conference Against Racism to return home. I know that you do not combat racism by conferences that produce declarations containing hateful language, some of which is a throwback to the days of Zionism equals racism, or that singles out only one country in the world, Israel, for censure and abuse." And the US retracted its participation. And then in 2009, 9 countries retracted the participation in the Durban II conference. We have people that are fighting for Israel throughout history, and you are the same people. This is what we're dealing with today. As I said, this is a journey. It doesn't go away. We're seeing Israel Apartheid Week, and we're seeing it on campuses throughout the world. We're seeing posters against Israeli apartheid in the Tube in London. We're seeing statements being made in some South African newspapers that compare the Israeli regime to a colonial occupying regime. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we have to fight. We're seeing actors that are signing petitions against Israel, singers that are canceling their concerts in Israel. It's ongoing. And these are not bad people. These are people, I assert, that just don't know the truth, that have not been educated. We need to educate them. Just like Dr. Chowki said, we need to find a way to educate the public. On and on and on. Here's what it looks like, just so that you understand the magnitude of the problem. This is a clip that was created by a group called One for Gaza, or Freedom for Gaza, and they created a clip called Freedom for Palestine. It was posted on Coldplay. Anyone heard of Coldplay here? Coldplay is a pop group in the UK. They created this, they adopted this clip. It was posted on their Facebook, and it made a lot of damage, as you might imagine, for Israel's reputation in the world.
So many years of catastrophe, more than 6 million refugees. It could be you and your family, forced from your home and your history.
We are the people, and this is our time. Stand up, sing out for Palestine.
No matter your faith or community, this is a crime against humanity. Gaza turned into a prison camp, apartheid war divides the West Bank.
We are the people, and this is our time. Stand up, sing out for Palestine.
We'll break down. illegal occupation, violence and racial segregation. All religious communities unite. Freedom is a human right.
I think we've seen enough. But as you can see, all these sound bites, and they're very powerful. For someone who is uneducated, this is what they get. Freedom for Palestine, illegal occupation, and on and on and on. And I want you to think about what are some of the pro-Israel statements and sound bites that we make. What have we got? And is it strong enough? Is saying that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East strong enough? Perhaps. Is saying that Israel wants peace strong enough? Well, it doesn't address occupation. We need to say these things, but we also need to say very loudly and clearly, this is our land. We're not going anywhere. You can see this campaign on universities in the UK, students supporting boycott of Israel. You can see it in South Africa. You can see it in Israel Apartheid Week. The website every year is renewed, new pictures, new trailers. If you go in there and look at one of the events that's going on, not everything is bad, by the way, we should say that. It's not happening everywhere in Europe, certainly not happening everywhere in the States. And I always tell my students, if Israel Apartheid Week doesn't arrive to your campus, don't bring it there. Don't go everywhere saying that Israel is not an apartheid state, because this is what people hear. They hear apartheid. You know, try in the next 30 seconds not to think about a pink elephant. What do you think about it? So we shouldn't bring it to where it's not. And yet it does find itself in some places. University of Sussex. One of my students actually was telling me that she's afraid to walk around the campus because of Israel Apartheid Week, and should she stay at home and be safe? So this is a real situation. Jerusalem News made a film about the situation on some campuses, not everywhere. It's called Crossing the Line 2, and I want to show you 1 minute of this film because it shows the magnitude of the problem.
I would have never said a year ago that this would happen on my campus. 30% Jews, this would never happen. It happened.
People were calling us fascists, Nazis, right on the student senate floor.
Seeing the very difficult situation that Jewish students face.
They are on the front line. They're the ones who are exposed.
There are going to be moments where you feel scared.
Students are definitely intimidated.
You Zionist scums. My only purpose today is that this event is shut down.
The negativity on campus make it difficult for me to be open about supporting Israel.
The way you oppose Jews in any given era is different. Because this is the era of the Jewish state, the attack of anti-Semites is focused on that. This is the anti-Semitism outside. It's not even a question.
That's what some of our students are dealing with on campus today. And thank God we have people that are courageous and that fight against this. Again, we do not want to over-dramatize the situation. Trends reports show that there's actually been this year, at least in the US, a decrease in anti-Israel events. And more students and organizations are standing up for Israel. South Africa, Israel Apartheid Week has its own website, comparing what happened in 1976 to 2014. This is a real problem on the one hand. On the other hand, they've done our job for us. And as Chairman Schwartz said, we have actually quieted them down. And they've done more damage than help. And more people are seeing the truth. So that's the kind of work that we need to be doing. If you go to the website, you see a whole world with Israel Apartheid Week events. And it looks very overwhelming at first. But if we dig a little bit deeper, if we start educating ourselves and seeing what's going on, well, we see, yes, there's something going on in Port Elizabeth. But if you go to Newcastle, and if you go to Ritchie, still coming soon. Israel Apartheid Week is over. We're still waiting. Again, if it doesn't arrive on campus, let's not bring it there. And you're seeing a trend of support, of countries, of leaders that are making the case for Israel, that are supporting, that are coming up with regulations against the boycotters. It's not just supporting of Israel, it's going against those people that have the lies. You see it in America, you see it in the UK, you see it in different artists that are supporting Israel, that are signing petitions. And you see it here in South Africa, demonstrations, marches. On Friday was one of the most inspiring moments of my life. I was marching in my fatherland, South Africa, marching with Jews supporting Israel, and with Daisy, and with local indigenous people that support the state of Israel. It was one of the most inspiring moments of my life. Let's just understand what they're saying. We need to clarify so that we can address what people are saying. So what are they saying? They're saying, first of all, that Israel's an apartheid state. This is the apartheid triangle. They're saying that Israel needs to end the occupation, colonization. It needs to give equality for Israeli Arabs, and it needs to allow the refugees to return. Which refugees are they talking about? 1948 refugees. By the way, how many refugees are there today? Palestinian refugees? 5 million. 5 million. Essentially, if you allow even half of that to return to Israel, you're saying it's the end of the Jewish state. So we need to educate people, because many of those that joined the apartheid campaign don't know. They don't know that they're saying no Israel, and we need to provide this education. Now, the definition of apartheid, according to the dictionary, segregation or discrimination on grounds of race. But it's much worse than that if you look at the Rome Statute. This is a heinous crime. We're talking about acts similar to enslavement and crimes against humanity such as murder. This is no small thing that they're saying about the homeland of the Jewish people. South African apartheid, there was racism by law. As you know, no right to vote, Banatustans, people couldn't just speak out freely. And it was colonialism. Colonialism where the British, the Dutch, came to a land and colonized the land. And they're saying the same about Israel. What are some of the facts on the ground? In order to explain this point, I want to do an exercise with you, have some fun with you, and I want you to guess what this is. This is a part of a bigger picture. Can someone tell me what it is?
It's a carpet.
The what?
It's a carpet.
Carpet, yes. Other thoughts? What is this? A desert. Okay, you're not very close. I'm going to give you another hint. Yes, a what? Grapes. Okay. Another hint maybe? Wheat. I thought this was a strong group. You're not very close. I'm going to give you all the hints together. Feel free to shout it out together.
Lion.
What's that? How did you know that? Indeed a lion. Indeed a lion. The point of this exercise is that if we want to address and understand what's going on, what are they saying, and how do we address it, we need to zoom out, see the bigger picture. Education is everything. So let's talk about full equality. Full equality, discrimination in Israel. There are tons and tons of examples. Supreme Court judge that is Arab, there are Druze, there are leaders that are with us here, Riyad Mansour, that are thriving in Israeli society, and I can go on and on and on and on. Now, is there discrimination in Israel? For sure. Are there problems in East Jerusalem with infrastructure for Palestinians? For sure. Show me one country in the world where that discrimination doesn't exist. That's impeccable, utopian. Not one country in the world, neither is Israel. We need to deal with our problems. But to call it apartheid cheapens the suffering of millions and millions of people for hundreds of years. South Africa, Israel, you can tell the difference. Now, it is helpful sometimes to zoom out even more and to look at the Middle East. And by the way, this is a map that I got of the Middle East conflict from one of my students. This was the map that they used throughout the course on the Middle East conflict. And I had an issue with this map because, yes, I know we have a problem with the Palestinians, but there are also other conflicts, some of them much more brutal than what's going on between Israel and the Palestinians. And the problem is that in the thinking and the association, if you go to Google today and enter Middle East conflict, most of the results you get are Israel and the Palestinians. That's a major problem. If you want to understand what's going on in this area, we have to zoom out and realize that Israel makes up 1/5 of 1% of the entire region. It fits 500 times into the Middle East. There are other countries, brutal murder regimes, much worse than Israel. There are conflicts that have nothing to do with Israel. Christians being persecuted, Sunnis versus Shiites versus Kurds. Yemen, Saudi Arabia fighting over borders. And if you do look at Israel, it's not just local between us and the Palestinians, unfortunately. 20 of the 22 members of the Arab League still reject Israel's right to exist. That's a major problem, and we need to contextualize that. Now, sometimes when I bring up that claim, people will say, well, two wrongs don't make a right. Why are you changing the subject and talking about Syria? And my answer, and I've said this to some of you, my answer is, compared to whom do you say that Israel is immoral, Israel is humane, has a terrible army? And I start with the worst of the worst. Compared to Syria, where over 500,000 have been killed over the last 4 years. Jordan, that killed over 10,000 who dared rise against the Jordanian regime in 1970. Palestinians, actually. Compared to maybe China in Tibet. Compared to the French in Algeria in the 1960s, where thousands were killed because they dared to rise against colonialism. Compared to whom is Israel immoral and inhumane? Compared to America and Afghanistan, NATO forces in Bosnia? And I'm not criticizing these countries. But if you look at Israel's records in dealing with day in and day out of terrorism, ongoing terrorism, we have a pretty good record. We're not perfect, but we are doing pretty well. And so my last answer is, compared to who is Israel immoral and inhumane? Compared to a utopian standard of perfection? Yes, the Israeli army is that. But so is anyone in any country in the world. And to put Israel on this pedestal and to expect it to abide by, I'm sorry, impossible standards, that's inhumane. I have no issue with criticizing Israel. I have an issue with singling out Israel. Because if you do that, it's hypocritical, it's unjust, and also, given that you are focusing on the Jewish state, then de facto, it's anti-Semitism.
That's right.
We can zoom out some more and look at the world and look at levels of freedom around the world. The world is not a free place, I'm very sorry. Freedom House, an organization that monitors levels of freedom in the world, will do that. It will color the world based on levels of freedom. Purple is not free. Yellow is partly free. Green is free, relatively speaking. No country is perfectly free. We're talking about women's rights, ethnic rights. And if you zoom in on Israel or on the Middle East, you can see that there is one democracy, now two maybe, democracies in the Middle East. Israel and Tunisia. Why is that relevant? Because it shows the hypocrisy. Here's something that is very disturbing. We've zoomed out to the Middle East and we've looked at the situation in the Middle East and persecution in the Middle East. It's affecting everyone, not just Jews, not just Sunnis and Shiites, but also Christians. Our next film is called Faith Keepers, and it shows the horrendous treatment of Christians in the Middle East, and that the numbers are almost fading away. And that we have to do something and stand firm against that. This is a short promo of that film.
The current status of Christians and other non-Muslim minorities throughout the Middle East is the worst it's been in centuries.
21 people were killed when a powerful bomb exploded in front of the Coptic Christian church.
Muslim mobs began attacking Christian churches.
They are targeting churches, temples, cultural and historical sites.
يعني أخذوني بالقوة واختصموني وتقريبا 4 أيام 5 أيام رجعت للبيت. هو كان بسيارته راجع من شغله، لزموا ايده ورجله ورايد away قطعوا راسه.
I converted from Islam to Christianity. I was arrested, and after that they gave me a death penalty. What I told the judge in this day, if loving and worshipping Christ is a crime, I'm guilty, as charged.
The Christians of Iraq and Syria who fled ISIS narrowly escaped a genocidal campaign of mass murder, of crucifixions, and of beheadings.
Now we are here in our center for youth. We have here 186 caravans, 260 families here.
What is taking place in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq, is genocide.
They call this ethnic cleansing. This is the real word.
The administration is failing, the Congress is failing, and quite frankly, with all due respect, the church is failing.
In response to persecution, I always want to tell people to pray. Stop, pray. Be burdened for your brother and sister, but get involved in the fight and help.
And doesn't matter how small is your voice, you can make a difference, even if you are just one person.
We need to get out there and start working together. I addressed conveniently the right of return of refugees. I'll just say very quickly that we're talking today, you can see the different definitions, and we're talking today about 5 million refugees and Jewish refugees from Arab countries that have gotten nothing, no compensation over the years. When people call for the right of return, they're essentially saying, no Israel, not in any borders. We need to educate people about that. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is the claim that I think is the most horrendous, and that is the occupation, the colonization. They're saying that, literally speaking, we are a foreign power. We don't belong. The Jews don't belong in the land of Israel. That's what they're saying. And if you look at some of the soundbites that are out there, if you look at the conventional soundbites, they're saying Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. We're saying it, at least. And I say it also a lot. It's very powerful. We value human rights. We invented the cell phone. Did you know that? I did, actually, but never mind. And that the allegation that these soundbites address is, for the most part, the apartheid allegation. And therefore, and this is, by the way, a genius analogy, because you're not just saying this is an apartheid state like South Africa pre-1994, you're saying there's a call to action, BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. So it's very powerful. But if you look at the claim, and if you look at the buzzwords regarding Israel today, it's much deeper than that. Israel is guilty of what? What's that word that people keep on saying? What's the word? Occupation, thank you. And colonialism. They're saying we're a bunch of colonialists. And if I want to be a bit more dramatic, Palestine was stolen from the indigenous Arabs, they're saying. The Jebusites, the Canaanites' descendants. And even more dramatic, they're saying we are a bunch of thieves. And unfortunately, we're not responding enough. We're doing some work, but we're not saying enough responding to this allegation. And the response cannot be, we want peace, because who cares? You stole the land. And it can't be, Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. That is a response to something else. It's not a response to you stole the land. And the response can't be, Israel invented the cell phone, because you are still a thief. And I'm sorry, but the response can also not be, we deserve a state because of the Holocaust. Yes, of course, we need a safe haven. I'm a grandson of Holocaust survivors. I appreciate Israel as a Jewish state. I know that. But I know that we came to Israel not because of sufferings and persecution, otherwise we would go to Uganda or Argentina. We came to Israel because this was our homeland. This is the homeland of the Jewish people. And when we take diplomats to Yad Vashem, we need to be careful not to send a message that we are here because of sufferings. We should also take them to Jerusalem and maybe, God forbid, to even Hebron, and show them Jewish history there. So we need to say, no, we're not. And we need to, of course, explain why we're not, and I'm not going to go over all of this, but divine rights are important. Divine rights give us conviction. Divine rights, Abraham gives us this land, Sana inecha וראה מן המקום אשר אתה שם, צפונה בנגבה וקדמה בימה, כי את כל הארץ אשר אתה רואה לך את פניה, ולזרעך עד עולם. קום התהלך בארץ לאורכה ולרחבה, כי לך את פניה. Go and fill the land. This is no small thing. As Rabbi Goldsmith mentioned the first Rashi, also addressing divine rights, the importance of knowing that this is ours. Now, the people, other people in the Middle East, may not agree with your religion, with your God, but they will respect you. Because the language of the Middle East is a religious language, and people respect religious conviction. If we look at indigenous, native rights, we can go all the way back 3,000 years ago. Continuous presence of Jews. Joshua leads the Jewish people into the land of Israel, 13th century BCE. And it wasn't like we were hanging out in the desert. This was the Jewish homeland. We had two temples, we had foreign relations, we had a government, we had 1,000 years, give or take, of sovereignty, of autonomy, self-rule. Like no other people, 3,000 years of continuous presence, even in places like Hebron. And if you look at 3,000 years of history in the land of Israel, you can see something fascinating. Pretty powerful. If you want to see this video, look at YouTube Imperial History of the Middle East. You can see the entire video. Very powerful. And the bottom line of this video, it shows what's unique about Jewish presence in the land of Israel. In 3,000 years, the only people that have had self-rule, sovereignty, for 1,000 years, that have made Israel their homeland, is the Jewish people. In every other time, it was always ruled by a foreign power. The Romans, the Ottomans, the Turks, the Romans, the Ottomans, the British. The Jewish people made Israel their homeland. They freed Palestine from its perpetual status of colonization. And this is something that was later on recognized by the international community, recognized not the right to start a state, but to reconstitute a homeland. That matters. The international community recognized the right of the Jewish people to a state in the land of Israel. This was the initial territory, by the way. 2 years afterwards, it was carved off, and 77% went to Jordan. Okay? So that's a little history lesson, but I want to start wrapping up because I know we're out of time. People ask about the apartheid wall, or the security barrier. I think is more accurate. There's 5% of it which is a wall. I'm not a fan. People in Israel are not fans. They're not fans of checkpoints either. But there are values clashing here. The value of freedom, or the value of convenience, and the value of life. And before the fence and the checkpoints and the IDF incursions, before they were put up, living in Israel was unbearable. Second Intifada, there was buses, restaurants, schools that were blowing up on a daily basis. The security measures have saved thousands of Israelis and Palestinians, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. This is what it was like in 2002. And then people say, well, you're not really interested in peace, you're interested in land. Really? In 1978, we gave land that was twice our size back to Egypt. In 1994, we made peace with Jordan. In 1993, the Oslo Accords with the Palestinians. In Camp David 2000, Israel offered over 90% of the remaining territories after the Sinai was given back. Jerusalem was going to become the capital of the Palestinian state. The Palestinian leadership rejected it. There was no counter-offer, and violence was inspired by the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, that took the lives of thousands of Israelis and Palestinians. So we're not interested in peace. That's what they say. Gaza was another story. That's when I came back to Israel, 2005. We disengaged. We gave the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, hoping that they would build a Singapore in the Middle East. What we got in return was rockets, 20,000 rockets plus. The entire country by now is under threat, whether from Gaza or from Lebanon. And so it begs the question, Israel has made all these concessions, over 90% of the territories were given away, and there are some in Israel say that, you know, what are you on? Why are you doing this? Why are you making all these concessions of your homeland? The question begs, what is this about? If you ask me, and this is my personal opinion, there are different reasons involved. But I assert that the root cause of the Arab-Israeli conflict is a rejection of Jewish sovereignty and Jewish freedom in the Middle East. Until our neighbors understand that the Jewish people are in their homeland and they're not going anywhere. I'm not leaving my home in Jerusalem. Nothing's going to change. There's going to be no peace. And if you want to do some homework today, go and read the Hamas Charter and see what it says about Israel. Go also and read the Palestinian Authority Charter, which still, unfortunately, has not been changed to accept Israel. They call for the liberation of Palestine, all of Palestine, not just Haifa and Tel Aviv. And so the question is really, what are we going to do? Tachlis, we say in Hebrew. Tachlis means bottom line. What do we do about all this? So really, in a nutshell, and I'm happy to discuss further about our courses and our education of Jerusalem New, but one response says, do nothing. And it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Because there are some that say that if Israel apartheid wins, if there's nothing going on, I'm not going to walk around with signs explaining that Israel's not an apartheid state. So if it doesn't arrive at your community, maybe there we should celebrate Israeli tomatoes and celebrate the cell phones and celebrate positive Israel. Yes. Celebrate Israeli diversity. That is a response. We need to work together. We need to get this discussion, this inspiration that we're having here on this day, and take it outside. We need to continue praying in our synagogues and churches, but we need to go outside and make the case for the Jewish state. We need to educate people. Explain to them what Israel is like today and what South African apartheid was like before 1994. Give them the facts, but not to forget to appeal to their emotions and tell stories. Because in the world of advocacy, emotions decide for people. Emotions decide, reason justifies. We need to appeal to their emotions and then follow it with facts and with truth. And while Israel may have its flaws, I believe that to be pro-Israel, to be a Zionist, is to have truth and justice on our side. There are some that say, you know what, we need to go on the offense. It's not enough that we say we're not bad. We need to actually point a finger and say, it's not that we're not bad, you're bad. Those that join BDS, those that call for the end of Israel, are bad. Because they don't recognize the right of a people to a state. There are some that say that we need to zoom out. And if anti-Israel protesters are really interested in human rights, they need to send a flotilla to Syria or to Iran and help the people that are suffering there from egregious human rights violations. That's more going on the offense. Final words. You know, people will bring up apartheid and BDS. They'll say that we're occupiers, and we might have responses. We might say, no, we're not, here's why, and then we'll explain the checkpoints and why they are good for security. And then they'll bring up the defense and the disproportionate force that Israel's using in Gaza. And as long as we're on the defensive, it is ineffective. At some point, we have to put our foot down and go on the offense. Thank you. Here's a quote for you by Ze'ev from Bar Ilan University about the power of having Jewish Christian pride. A man calls you a pig. Do you walk around with a sign explaining that in fact you're not a pig? Do you hand out leaflets expostulating in detail upon the manifold differences between you and a pig? A pig is a snout, I have a nose. A pig wallows in mud, I only occasionally step in a puddle, and then of course inadvertently. Do you stand on a soapbox and discourse your erudity on why in general it's extremely not nice to call people pigs? And appeal to the populace to please have no truck with an individual rude and nasty enough to say such things about an upstanding citizen like yourself. Fellow Jews, fellow Christians, fellow Hindus, where is your dignity? Where is your abhorrence of useless, thoughtless, counterproductive endeavor? These are big words. The bottom line is we need to be strong. In the parasha, in the end of the parasha this week, it says, Chazak, Chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened. Enough apologizing, enough going on the defensive, enough being weak. The Jewish people, the supporters of Israel, are strong and will continue to be strong in years to come. Thank you very much.